So good morning, everyone. Welcome to July 20th, 2025. Oh my goodness. How did we get here? I want to thank Mary for reading the Mary Oliver poem twice. It grabbed me when I found it, and I said, yes, this is perfect. And often I don't always know. I just know the feeling. Yes, this is the one. And it speaks to that place of stop, how very important it is to stop and notice and listen to, even if it's a ridiculous performance. And I would say in the world right now is a lot of ridiculous performance, perhaps. I would say that. And I chose Return to Love, of course, because the first part of that, the very first line is, everybody's got a story and Lord knows I've got mine. All the things we bring into the world, all the masks we hide behind, all our pain and all our glory, all of the stuff that we put out into the world as a boundary, as a personality, sometimes as a shield, sometimes as a wide open invitation to say, come get to know me. The invitation of the riot of nature that doesn't give anything, as basically what she's saying, and Mary Oliver is saying, is it doesn't give a second thought to us about our self-importance, our egos, our need for competition, our need to be better than someone or something else in order to be loved. It just asks us to be love. It asks us to return to love. Anytime we get twisted up in that little place, in that personality of this thing that we present to the world, the mask we present to the world. And it asks us to change our life, which I, of course, with Ernest Holmes and the science of mind, that's the whole premise, is change your thinking, change your life. Change consciousness, change your results. And exchange the busyness of self-judgment and judgment of others' paths. Let it go, lay it down. Notice that in every moment is beauty and nature and God. And within ourselves, it's okay to lay down the BS stories, the boundary system stories of ourselves, out of our lack of self-awareness. And really, most of the time, that's all it is. We're just going through life, getting it done. So to lay it down, to lay down the learned unacceptance that we are the expressions of God. It's accepting what is in this moment. And we're talking about boundaries today in the term generative boundaries, which initially was like, what's that about? And Reverend Mary asked me this morning, what's the definition? And you had a better definition than I did, Reverend Mary. It is our ability to produce and reproduce a boundary. So, our way of being, as it were. And Mary's definition was, so in generative meaning in real time. It's I don't want to say it's permeable, but it can be. And as we move in consciousness, as we grow in consciousness of conscious awareness of our being, that we are God expressing, that's going to change from day to day. How we see the world, how we take it in, what we put out to the world, how we tell people, how we teach people to treat us. A lot of us were not taught healthy boundaries, and not necessarily out of malice or out of any ill intention, but that way of doing things that gets passed down from generation to generation with us. So this is just how it is. This is just how it is. This is just how you behave so that you get along in the world. And women, especially of a certain age, I think all of us here are that, and that is that we were taught that saying no, as Reverend Rainbow said this morning, no is a complete sentence. But we were taught that saying no made us selfish and unlovable and disagreeable, a troublemaker, unfit for motherhood, unfit to be in the workplace, and all of that wrapped around you're going to end up alone if you're not a nice person or a nice girl, if you're not a good girl. And all of us, I think men, of course, too, don't rock the boat. Keep the systems in place that make everybody comfortable. Except that's not how we're wired spiritually. One of the basic tenets of our teaching is that because spirit is and has its being in us, and as us, it, spirit, is always seeking to evolve and expand its expression of itself by means of us. Oops, sorry. If you observe little kids playing, like littles, like, the 2 to 3 year olds, the toddlers, if they're allowed to play, if they're uninhibited by the boundaries of belief of their teachers or their parents or their caregivers, you'll see that little children are not inherently racist or homophobic. They don't give a fig about gender politics, about gender identity. They don't even know what gender is. They want to wear what feels good, what feels fun. They want to do what's fun, what feels comfortable, what makes them them. As they discover who they are, I like to say, as they remember who they are. They're not homophobic, they're not hateful, they're not misogynistic, anti-Semitic, anti-Muslim, any of it. All of these things must be taught. There was a video a couple of years ago, and it as things do on social media, they make their rounds every couple of years. And you may have all seen it, and it is on a city sidewalk, and there are 2 toddlers, and one is black, one is white, and they are racing towards each other with arms out, like outstretched, like, oh my God, here's my best friend in the world that I haven't seen, and I've known you for so long, and I love you so much. And just the unbridled joy that they have, greeting each other. Like, oh my gosh, there you are. Wouldn't that be amazing if we did that with everyone we knew every day? It would probably freak a few people out, granted, because boundaries, healthy boundaries. But if we, as a culture, and there are a lot of cultures that do this still to this day, the United States is not one of them, really. We do it in small groups. We do it in our spiritual centers. We do it when we see each other in person, when we're familiar with someone. But if we saw everyone as familiar, if we saw that God being in each other, to be able to say, oh my gosh, it is so wonderful to see you. What a different world we would be in. We know that little kids don't have boundaries. They are complete sponges, but they're also just absolutely enamored with exploring and experimenting and using their emerging consciousness and their self-awareness as they remember who they are and the God, they know the God selves in these, what are these funny things, this hands, what are fingers, what are my ears and my toes? And there's a natural brilliance and joy in their creativity because the unlimited possibilities they see everywhere have not been smothered or shamed out of them yet, through the constant messages about being realistic in their pursuits. They haven't been taught that they must tamp down their unbridled joy and enthusiasm in order to fit in and therefore be lovable. And again, without any malice or ill intent for the most part of a parent or a teacher, it's that message that we're given that are essentially they're crossing our boundary. Our boundary is saying we have a self, a personhood, and we know who we are when we're little. We're not completely conscious of it yet, and we can't articulate it. We don't have the mechanisms to articulate it yet, or the language, but we know who we are, and then we forget, and it's taught out of us. So the generational boundaries, or the lack thereof, the social norms, all the things we humans put in place in order to get along with each other, to have a controlled, polite, nice society, all of those things, we're always just smearing the lines. Me telling you who you have to be or who you are, because it makes me feel better about myself if I make you less than. And of course, the flip side of that is watching somebody blossom when we do see who they are and acknowledge it, reflect it to them, be the mirror to them, saying, what a wonderful being you are, and watch them just light up and blossom and go on with what they do so well in the world, being love. We know in our teaching, of course, that our beliefs about ourselves and the world around us create our results. And we know that love is the most powerful, most potent energy in the universe. And we also learn that no matter what is happening, that power is behind everything, even when it looks like a broken and chaotic world. That is something that I hold on to every day in the appearance of this broken and chaotic world. There is something within me that says, there is still God in this. There is a lot of God in this. There is a lot of God here, and I hang on to that because I see, I'll get to this in a second, everyone and everything is a reflection of who and what we have been taught to believe ourselves to be. Everything's a lesson, everyone's a mirror, no matter where I am. That's the line from Return to Love. But when my heart is open and my mind is clear, I know I can always return to love. That means having a boundary of knowing who I am and what I believe in and what I will tolerate and what I will not, but also moving beyond that to be the expression of that in the world, to reflect to someone else when they cannot remember it for themselves. That's what we do as practitioners. That's what we do as ministers. That's what we do anytime we hold space for someone in a loving way. Not trying to fix them, not trying to change them, just holding space to let them move through and discover that deep, deep voice that knows everything's okay. All is well. And there is an answer. There is a next step. There is something for each of us to do to be expansions and expressions of love in the world. We are, as humans, we are absolutely wired for connection, for relationship, for interacting in ways that either hurt or hinder that expression of the divine. And when we know who we are, when we practice remembering in the deepest part of our souls, when we remember who we are as individualized expressions of the one, and keep that awareness in the forefront of our minds and live into it consistently, while also accepting our humanness and everyone else's, compassion becomes a natural state of our being. And our need to control others in order to feel better, to cross other people's boundaries, to feel better about ourselves, that dissolves naturally when we deeply know and remember and live from who we are. So this word boundaries, let's talk about this for a minute, and especially boundaries versus rules. Okay, so the simple analogy is a sports field or an arena. So right now Wimbledon is going on in the UK. Okay, and you can see this is the visual. The tennis court has lines, it has boundaries, and when the ball goes here or here or here, it's inbound, it's out of bound, it's out of play. It sets up the container. This is the agreed upon container for all parties involved. Everybody knows what the framework is, what the parameters are, what the shape, the size, etc., etc. Those are the boundaries. The rules are what the rules of the game are. The rules are what takes place within that container. So everybody's, quote unquote, level playing field, on the same page about the behavior and the actions that make the game work. And it still leaves it open to, in the moment, activity. That's the fun of it, is the serve and the strategy and all of these things, but there's still a beautiful compartment that says this is okay and this is not okay. And we all know through sports, through politics, through entertainment, through law, through everything, through religious things, that there are always people pushing the boundaries in good ways and in not good ways. But the idea is we have something that we begin with, generative boundaries, that will change, as we understand that we're going to evolve and expand and explore and experiment. And some things aren't going to work anymore. In society, we get to places, we know this. So we're going to be open at the top, as Ernest Holmes says, for what might come next, what could come next, what's the possibility of what could come next. So boundaries are define the setting and the container. The rules define what happens within that container. If we talk about personal boundaries, this is where we teach others how to treat us and how we treat ourselves. And we have to start with how we treat ourselves. Our internal boundaries are the personal limits. It's taking responsible for our own well-being and our actions. It's holding ourselves accountable, having integrity with ourselves, following through with the things that keep us in our value system. Our value system of, honesty and kindness and compassion and these things, that following through, being responsible, as I said. The external personal boundaries are how we communicate to others what is okay and not okay with us. What behaviors we will or will not accept or tolerate from others. And it is that place where we have to stand in knowing who we are, because a lot of times, as we all know, when we set a boundary with someone, especially if they are not used to us setting a boundary with them, they're going to push back because it makes them uncomfortable. So it is in our purview to make sure we are steadfast, that we know who we are, that nothing can move us off of that. It's okay to take in feedback, as the song said, and as I've already said, the mirrors we get back from society will tell us everything we need to know. The conditions of our lives will tell us everything we need to know about what our internal boundaries are. What's acceptable. If we let people walk all over us, we're going to get more of that. If that is a belief, and if it is an unconscious belief, again, we look at the conditions of our lives and say, what is happening here? Why is this happening? Not why is this happening to me, but where is my role in this? What is my role in this? And that is the work of doing the deep work of self-awareness, remembering who we are, thinking about where our boundaries might have gotten crossed early in our lives, and what that pattern is keeps replicating, keeps regenerating in our experience. Rules, on the other hand, rules are, of course, we need them in society. Again, it gives us a container. We're kind of all on the same page. We all kind of know where we're going, kind of thing. But oftentimes, and we're seeing this being played out in Technicolor HD sound, full spectrum surround sound, that rules are often imposed on others and associated with consequences and punishments if not followed. Rules can be the way to exert power over another person. In the laws, we have spiritual laws, we have the immutable laws of physics, we have man-made laws to protect and defend and to give voices to the voiceless, but too often, again, are made intentionally to exert power over others. It is my observation, and I think we all see it, is that people without a healthy self-image or healthy boundaries have been using that age-old thing that fear is a powerful motivator. But in our spiritual growth and evolution, in the history of New Thought, just in the last 100+ years or so, we know that when we are aware and we live from that place of knowing that we are God expressing, we don't need an intermediary to tell us what our experience or our relationship to a higher power is. So we've been gaining a new perspective, and we are seeing that right now. In my view, in my opinion, is there are more of us who have been waking up to that, which is why we're seeing the crumbling of the top-down authoritarian, do as I say, not as I do stuff. Those that are still clinging to that form of self-worth, external, not internal, are losing, and in my opinion, have lost all credibility as leaders, and especially spiritual authorities. In The Gifts of Imperfection, Brené Brown says, when we fail to set boundaries and hold people accountable, we feel used and mistreated. This is why we sometimes attack who they are, which is far more hurtful than addressing a behavior or a choice. And this is an important distinction with boundaries. Our boundaries are not the rigid, you can't do this, you can't hurt me, the shielding. That's not a boundary. That is a protective device. That is a defense mechanism. A boundary is simply stating, yes means yes, no means no, complete sentence. This is how I will be treated. And if this doesn't work for us, I'm going to walk away from this. I'm not going to continue to subject myself to you treating me badly. And vice versa. And that's the thing with a healthy boundary, when we know the parameters, like the tennis game. When someone says, this is the kind of behavior I will tolerate or not, we know. It gives us the responsibility and the permission to say, okay, I agree with this or I don't. And now, because I'm clear, I don't have to make up a bunch of stuff in my head about this person. I can separate a behavior from the person that I know and work to see as a divine expression, just like I am. Brené Brown again in Rising Strong, The Reckoning, the Rumble, the Revolution, she says, compassionate people ask for what they need. They say no when they need to. When they say yes, they mean it. They're compassionate because their boundaries keep them out of resentment. And resentment, oh my goodness, that is so tangled up with that. When we say yes when we don't mean it, then we've said yes to something we don't want to do or going somewhere we don't want to go. There is an expectation, of course there is, because we have said yes to someone or something. And then when our insides are just churning, we, instead of saying, oops, I really should have said no when I really wanted to say no, we want to relieve the pain by pushing it outward and blaming and shaming and making it somebody else's fault. Instead of just owning it and saying, you know what, here's a thing, here's a practice that I can do. It's really okay for me to change my mind. If I say no to something and mean it, I'm good. If I say yes to something and I'm wobbly, and then I reflect on it, I can change my mind, even if someone else is going to be, we go, oh, they're going to be so upset, I'm going to hurt their feelings. Everyone has the right to change their mind and own it. And say, I overcommitted myself, or this really doesn't feel right to me, or we find the thing that doesn't put any of it on the other person because it was our choice. It was our choice to say yes when we know we didn't want to say yes. That is working with a healthy boundary. And we see it all the time, especially I do my best to stay off social media. We're seeing all of this. Rules and laws broken, no accountability. This is all the shadow side of fear. And a belief that someone else is taking something from us. The victim consciousness. And what is challenging to me, most challenging to me in these times, is to recognize that much of this is done intentionally. Illegally, cruelly, immoral, indecent, hateful. The idea that rules don't apply to me, or that your boundaries are limiting me. It breaks my heart that it is done intentionally. And again, I work really hard at the compassion within me, because I have unconsciously done not nice things to people. And I didn't murder anybody, but my own behavior, my ignorance of my own divinity and my pain and my unhealed woundedness stuff, I projected, I blamed. And that idea that somebody's going to tell me what to do, oh boy, no, you're not. No, you're not. So I get it. But I also have continued to do the work to say, yeah, there is that part of me that knows and believes that I am lovable, I am divine, I am worthy, I am all of those things because God is in me. And if God's in me, then God's in everybody else too. And it is challenging day in and day out, and I have learned I don't even look at the headlines anymore. I know that that's a boundary that some people would say, well, you're not doing anything about this. Actually, I am. I'm doing my work in consciousness first. I don't want to get caught up I call it a cesspool, plain and simple. A cesspool of social media, regardless of how enlightened some of the posts feel. We are collectively waking up to the fact that fear is not a powerful motivator. It is a toxic destroyer. And this is one of those places that Martin Luther King and Gandhi, and we all know this. Not to meet violence with violence, not to meet hatred with hatred. The most powerful form of resistance and change is to keep showing up as love. This last week, I think it was on Thursday, John Lewis, who was representative in Georgia for a long time, 30 some odd years, who was on the Pettus Bridge and was attacked during the Selma marches. His good trouble, talking about getting in good trouble. There were over 1,500 marches around the country to honor his life, and he passed away Thursday 5 years ago. And he was teaching others how we wanted to be treated, walking away when people wanted to put violence, and rather than meeting it with hatred, met it with love. Loving ourselves first, knowing how to treat ourselves with kindness and compassion and respect and honoring, because we're children of God. We are divine expressions. And when I put it in that context, when I have those days, and I do, I had a couple this week where my critical parent, there were some things that, just wanted to take me into shame about, and I wait a minute. This is just the next layer of learning, remembering that I am, like everyone else, an expression of the divine. So I'm going to treat myself to the best of my ability with all of those boundaries that got crossed, and the operating system and the consciousness in my subconscious that I was not lovable or worthy, that I was separate from God. All of those things, I go back to our teaching. God is all there is, really. Period. And it is in us, through us, as us. And that's the practice. And then when I get back to that place, my heart opens. I have compassion. It doesn't mean I tolerate bad behavior. Call it out. We stand up for yourselves. We stand up for each other. And we remain open at the top. We have opportunities everywhere for growth and healing, every single day, every moment of every day. And placing those opportunities in a healthy container around a healthy boundary of love allows us to move more peacefully, more harmoniously, that too, in our resonance with each other. But we have to know our boundaries. We have to be willing to stretch them, or at least review and question them regularly. Just like society, rules will change as we grow and evolve and figure out what doesn't work for us individually and collectively. And we adjust. A lot of people right now think that their way is the only way as it benefits them. And they're fighting tooth and nail to keep those dysfunctional systems in place. And our work as loving, compassionate people is to see the woundedness and the wholeness in others. And we must also hold them responsible and accountable for the actions, just as we do ourselves. Calling out the injustices, meeting it not with violence or further injustice by refusing. We do this by refusing to be violent or cruel or hateful or indecent or dismissive of our fellow man. And we return to that thing that Mary Oliver said. Believe us, they say, the goldfinches. Believe us, they say, it is a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in this broken world. I beg of you, do not walk by without pausing to attend to this rather ridiculous performance. And when we stand back from this, it's a pretty ridiculous performance sometimes. It could mean something. It could mean everything. To stop and pause and listen and look and be in gratitude and sheer delight. And it could be what Rilke meant when he wrote, you must change your life. So let's get busy. Let's take this into a spiritual mind treatment. I know, absolutely know, and feel it to the depth of my being today, that God is indeed all there is and the only thing happening at any given moment. And that by the very fact that we are here alive and breathing on this fresh morning, that must also logically mean we are of God. We are a part of God's expression. And so anchoring into that knowing, what comes up in me is gratitude. Because the cycles of war and peace and hate and fear and love and abundance and harmony and all of these things, the cyclic nature of nature and of man's nature, it's the cyclic nature of God too, to bring us to our consciousness. And this is what I affirm. We are in a cycle of great, great conscious awakening. We are in a cycle of tremendous change in the way that we express as a human family. And I accept that change can be painful and look destructive and chaotic and all of that. That's the nature of creation. The old must be pushed aside, blown apart sometimes, in order for the new, the greater, the better expression, expansion of God to express. So what I know is at this time in history, there is a belief, there is a groundingness, there is an acceptance of knowing that God is in this too. That God is in everyone too, and our place. I affirm our knowing that our place is to continue to show up as love, as love, as love, as kindness, as compassion. And also that we hold those permeable generative boundaries. We stand in the truth of who we are and we speak it to the rooftops. The truth of who we are, because I know and I affirm you can't argue with the truth. And so knowing that every divine being that is hearing this treatment today, that is experiencing it, that takes it out into the world, becomes that greater expansion and expression of God. And I'm grateful. I'm so deeply grateful to know that this is so. I'm so honored to speak this truth. I'm so very grateful to know it is already so. And so I let it be so. And we affirm it together by saying, and so it is.